Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be showcasing some very fun battles from the Great League, where a trainer has climbed all the way up to number 212 in the entire world in the Great League with a Magcargo. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, WildcatDad17, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, Wildcat Dad is pairing up Magcargo with Toedscruel, as Toedscruel shuts down the mud slappers that Magcargo doesn't want to see, and Magcargo does a great job at shutting down the flyers and fires that Toedscruel isn't a big fan of. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and let's take a look at this team in action. And the team's off to a rough start in game number 1, leading Toedscruel into Mandibuzz. Save switch into Fortress is unanswered by the opponent, and interestingly enough, they're actually running Snarl on Mandibuzz instead of the more common Air Slash. Dark Pulse is going to connect, and this Mandibuzz is going to take a lot of damage if they decide to no-shield the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb connects, opponent now sends out a Wigglytuff, and how is this their best response to a Fortress? They just completely forgot about Fortress when team building, and now this is going to be a really tough game for them, as Fortress is able to output a ton of pressure in this matchup. Fortress is even going to make a second Rock Tomb. This is just cleanly knocking out unless the opponent decides to burn a shield. They will do just that, and they've lost almost their entire Wigglytuff. The Wigglytuff is 2 stages debuffed, in comes the Toedscruel. This is double super effective Icy Wind, but it's also double debuffed, so that's not going to be a problem for the Toedscruel. What could be a problem is a second Icy Wind being reached. Opponent switches in the back. They have a Charm, a Alolan Ninetales. There's nothing I love more than watching double Charm get destroyed, and Magcargo's here to shut it all down. Weather Ball, that's not going to save you, trainer. And now, Magcargo will get to take the win very, very comfortably. Rock Tomb will pick up the KO. There's still 2 shields for Magcargo to hide behind, and the Mandibuzz just can never get to enough moves to take home this win. Mandibuzz will bait with the Aerial Ace, but it's just too little too late, as not only are these Incinerates adding up, but with each Rock Tomb, Mandibuzz's attack grows weaker and weaker and weaker. Even at this range, a Dark Pulse probably won't even KO. The opponent will go for the Aerial Ace bait. There is the catch attempt onto the Wigglytuff. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Dream lead in game number 2, Toedscruel into Shadow Marowak. Opponent save switches into Dewgong, and this matchup right here is one of the reasons why Dewgong is a shell of its former self. Dewgong just cannot fight back in any meaningful way against the bugs. This matchup is so incredibly dominant for the Fortress. Fortress will get to fire off the Rock Tomb. Dewgong puts up a shield, but even so, Fortress does not have to shield back. A Drill Run does not provide a meaningful threat to the Fortress. Fortress is even going to get to yet another Rock Tomb. Is the opponent really going to double shield here? Do they value switch advantage this much? And it looks like they do. They're going to double shield, pivot back into the Marowak. So the fact that they're making this switch does make me think that it could be a Bastiodon in the back, and they're ABA weak to the Toedscruel, and that's why they have to try and bait it back out. Well, with no Protect Shields to save this Marowak, super effective Seed Bomb is guaranteed to connect. It does, and Marowak gets KO'd. Back in comes the Dewgong, but there's still shields available for the Toedscruel. Toedscruel will shield up. Seed Bomb, even at -1, is easily knocking out the Dewgong. Let's see what they have in the back. In the back, the opponent has a Toxapex, so they were pretty weak across the board to Toedscruel, except for that Dewgong. Unfortunately for the opponent, they're just going to get debuffed and debuffed and debuffed in this matchup. Brine is double super effective, but with the debuff, it just does not matter. Magcargo tanks that comfortably, gets to another Rock Tomb, and for the Toxapex, there's just no way out, and for the second game in a row, this opponent will resign the match. We've got a battle of grass types in the next match, Toedscruel versus Credilli. Now, Credilli will slightly outpace to the first move. Grass Knot will hit for some pretty significant neutral damage. Immediate no shield from the Toedscruel. Toedscruel will opt for a resisted wrap. Wrap obviously does come with the benefit of a guaranteed defense drop, the no shield from the opponent. We're now going to see the switch into Fortress. Did the opponent react in time to fire off the Rock Tomb? Yes, they did. Very nice reaction time from them. And now, oh my goodness, out comes Typhlosion to fully burn it down. But now Typhlosion's gonna have to deal with the fact that there is a Magcargo hitting the field, and Magcargo is going to be able to be a pretty nice wall to energy from Typhlosion. Even so, Magcargo is going to put up a shield, fire off the Rock Tomb, but unfortunately lose the CMP tie. Thunder Punch will land, not even doing half of Magcargo's remaining health. Magcargo's Rock Tomb is going to get a shield from the Typhlosion, so the opponent really prioritizing this Typhlosion. Always that a Thunder Punch catch onto Toedscruel. That would be triple resisted, and it is. But unfortunately, the final Pokemon is Talonflame. Talonflame going to be an issue for the Toedscruel. It's a Shadow Talonflame at that. Shadow Talonflame definitely worse here for the Magcargo because these Incinerates and the flying moves are going to hit substantially harder. The Magcargo has now lowered the attack of the opponent, but even still, a Brave Bird would knock out. We see the shield. Talonflame did full send the Brave Bird, and the farm down occurs. The lack of bulk on the Shadow Talonflame working against them. In comes Credilli, opponent hoping for a catch, but it's not to be. Magcargo has the back-to-back Rock Tombs. Down goes Credilli. This is going to be game over for the Typhlosion. Magcargo Masterclass in game number 3 to take home the win. Unfortunately, game 4 off to a very rough start leading into Galarian Moltres. Quick save switch to the Fortress. Moltres does have a pacing advantage here, but the Bug Bites really make their presence felt as the Moltres is rapidly losing HP. Moltres grabs her shield with the fly, and now Tinkaton is going to be what greets this Fortress. Fortress will be spamming out Sand Tombs, trying to get as many debuffs as it possibly can in a pretty negative matchup. Opponent will go for the Bulldoze, 50-50 to get the debuff, and they do get lucky as the debuff will go through. Fortress firing off Sand Tomb number 2. Switch Clock is available as needed. There's the switch into the Toedscruel, but unfortunately, I don't think I saw a Mud Slap sneak through there. That means the Tinkaton will still have quite a bit of HP, and now Toedscruel is going to be met with the Galarian Moltres. Moltres will play to the CMP tie, denying the wrap. Moltres preserving as much HP as possible. This can set up Magcargo to put in some nice work, but unfortunately, the one thing that Magcargo can't shield is Sucker Punches. So instead, I like the decision of bringing the Fortress. Magcargo is going to have to sweep, so preserving health on it could be very helpful. Now in comes Magcargo. Opponent is debuffed here, and all they can throw are resisted moves. That's going to be a fly in the back. Oh no, it's Shadow Kanto Marowak, and there was never a win con. Tough lead again in the next match. Toedscruel into the Shadow Drifblim. Save switch into Fortress. Opponent is going to be sending out their own Fortress. They choose not to stay in that matchup. Even though Bug Bites are heavily resisted by Drifblim, Drifblim clearly worried about the potential of the Rock Tomb, so instead decides to switch into a Mirror down energy, which means that if Wildcat Dad wants, he will always be able to win switch in this matchup. We'll get to another Rock Tomb. This will be cleanly knocking out the opponent even at -1 attack. The Rock Tomb does get shielded. It looks like the opponent, can they go for the farm down? No, they cannot, and Wildcat Dad will decide to let this go, prioritizing the potential to get some farm over switch advantage. Hopefully Magcargo can sweep in the endgame. Drifblim answered with the Magcargo. It's going to be a Shadow Drapion in the back, and this is tough. Not only does Drapion hit for double super effective damage, but Drapion is very, very spammy. And that's going to be the biggest obstacle for Magcargo here. Magcargo does have a shield advantage, but can Magcargo get to the Rock Tomb before the Drapion is able to force all shields? Magcargo has the move here, but if it throws right now, it's going to get outpaced by the Drifblim. It needs more energy, and unfortunately, that's going to allow the Drapion to get a last-second move. Aqua Tail lands, it's double debuff, so it will not be enough to knock out. The banking of energy on the Magcargo is going to allow a catch onto the Toedscruel, but unfortunately, this is where the lack of coverage on Toedscruel is going to be devastating, as Drifblim can just fully farm down, and I assume Drifblim is going to be winning that charge attack priority tie. There's a move banked, but I just trust Drifblim to win that CMP tie, and I did just double check it as I'm recording. It looks like Drifblim wins it by about 10, so not a close CMP tie. A really tough team comp, almost able to find the win con, but not quite. We move to the next match. Opponent is emptying the Spice Cabinet as they're leading a Great League Kingambit. Kingambit going to switch out into a Corsola as the save switch, and Corsola is actually very awkward for this team to deal with, as this entire team does have losing matchups. Corsola, Nightshade not going to pick up a knockout by any means, so Toedscruel can actually survive this and return a fire with another Seed Bomb, but likewise, Seed Bomb also not going to be threatening to the Corsola. Corsola no shields because Corsola knows it can hang on. The good news for Wildcat Dad is the entirety of the team should do pretty well into Kingambit. Kingambit is going to hit the field, and look at the Bug Bites go to work. My goodness, we will see an early shield from the Fortress as Kingambit reveals they are running Foul Play. For a secondary move, they could be running Iron Head, or my guess would be Focus Blast. Sandtomb does get no shielded. It doesn't look like the bug bites are doing any more damage there, so I'm not sure if there was an extra breakpoint applied by that -1 defense modifier. Foul play will land in the back is, oh no, it's superior. The opponent running AVA weak to fire, and Magcargo's here to make them regret that decision, and the opponent unfortunately will have to resign the match. Man, that was an incredibly cool team. Big props to them. Good lead in the next match. Toedscool leading into the Shadow Typhlosion. Opponent's save switches, oh no, into Jellicent, and this is where things could get very tricky. Very smart play by the opponent to fire off this Surf first, because that way they get the turn back. If they had farmed up to the Shadow Ball, then Toedscool could have thrown first and they wouldn't have gotten their full sneak and they would have always been behind by a full Hex. But now, this is a completely energy even matchup. They're going to go for the Surf, realizing that they will need 2 moves to pick up the knockout. Switch advantage highly important here, as the Typhlosion cannot see that Fortress. Opponent switches into Typhlosion, and the good news is, Typhlosion is where it needs to be, and that is stuck against the Magcargo. They go for the Thunder Punch. That's not going to be a problem, as Magcargo threatens an instant KO, and of course a guaranteed attack drop. The opponent is going to commit the shield, but now their Thunder Punch is just not going to KO. Magcargo, thanks to that -1 attack on the Typhlosion, will pretty comfortably survive, and Typhlosion is going to lose itself and its final shield. Quick switch into the Fortress in the back, it's Jumpluff, and down a shield, Jumpluff is just helpless. Opponent realizes it, and they will concede the match. We move to the next game. Oh my goodness, the perfect lead. Toedscool into Dedenne. Opponent safe switches for it. An interesting call here to send in Magcargo, making the read that it's going to be the Toedscool in the back, and therefore, if it's the Toedscool, that would be an absolute nightmare for Magcargo to deal with. So I honestly really like this play. This is a very smart play by Wildcat Dad, understanding that Dedenne is very commonly paired with Toedscool, and if it's Toedscool in the back, then ideally saving the Fortress is what's going to win this game. A shield does come up from the Magcargo, firing off the Rock Tomb, and the opponent is just going to let themselves get KO'd. In comes Dedenne. Dedenne immediately under threat from the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb will do a lot of damage. Dedenne will put up a shield. Dedenne is going to get a big farm down, but they paid a pretty severe price in the back. It is the Toedscool. In comes the Fortress. Great team recognition there, and that's going to secure the win. Unfortunately, this is an absolute worst case lead scenario leading into a Talonflame. Talonflame, just an absolute nightmare. This team is ABA weak. Toedscool forced to stay in one of its worst matchups, and the opponent actually gets a full farm down. In comes Magcargo. They bank 100 energy, send in the Shadow Marowak, and unfortunately, there's realistically no way this game will ever be a win, because if you're leading Talonflame, surely you must have a pretty good check to rock types in the back. They save switch the Marowak, so I'm assuming it's an even harder counter to Magcargo than that. Marowak does end up no shield in the Sand Tomb. Fortress puts up a shield. Fortress so desperately needs this Marowak off the field. If there's any hope for the Magcargo, Magcargo is going to have the Marowak dealt with, as Marowak will get knocked out by the Sand Tomb, but they should have a very good counter in the back. They send out Credilli. Credilli actually less of a good counter than I was anticipating, but unfortunately, it's still going to be too much to overcome. Credilli will get to apply Rock Tomb debuffs, and even a Talonflame Brave Bird that's double resisted will still inflict some serious damage. The Rock Tomb gets no shielded, as Magcargo understands that a Rock Tomb is landing anyway, since it only has 1 shield left. That Rock Tomb not going to do a whole lot. The opponent will get to grab the final shield with the Rock Tomb, and then combo play with the Brave Bird to win the game. There is the switch into the Fortress, hoping for the catch, but the opponent reacts in time. Fly is going to be connecting, and now it's Brave Bird time. Oh, that is unfortunate. That's basically the worst possible lead this team could see. Wildcat Dad did what he could, but unfortunately that lead is kind of just impossible. Hopping into the final match, and it's going to be Toedscool into Shadow Scizor. Shadow Scizor does have a pacing advantage, but the good news here is a Trailblazer or a Night Slash will not KO. Toedscool going to look to preserve some HP though, and put up the shield as Scizor goes for the Trailblaze. If this wrap is no shielded, then it will put the Scizor into 1 Mud Slap range, and that's exactly what's going to happen. They take the shield advantage, and Toedscool wins alignment. Opponent is going to send in a Azumarill to a loaded Toedscruel. Azumarill can survive the Seed Bomb, but it will do quite a bit of damage. Toedscruel going to switch out into the Fortress, and Azumarill still throws the move. That's really, really good news. Play Rough not going to do a whole lot of damage, and this very well could be the Credilli in the back team, and that's why the opponent is forced to stay in, because they have a Bug Bite weakness in the back. Rock Tomb does get shielded up by the Azumarill, and this is a -1 Azumarill. Fortress is very happy to no shield. Another Play Rough will connect. The opponent still staying in. They are refusing to switch out, and they will make one final move. This Play Rough will not knock out. It's actually an Ice Beam. There's the switch to the Toedscruel in the back. A Shadow Malamar, and the Psywaves are slightly too much for the Toedscruel as it faints with the wrap loaded. Back in comes the Fortress. Fortress gets to apply a debuff. The opponent is going to take so much damage, they end up no-shielding that. In comes the Magcargo. Opponent realizes they just don't have the health to win the game, and they will resign the match. All in all, I think this is a really creative team, and I'm happy to see that it was able to put together some pretty nice results at Leaderboard Elo. This trainer was pretty solidly in the 3100s, which is top 250 worldwide, and I believe they mentioned they went 10-5 across the sets that they submitted. So a pretty spicy team. I don't know if I'd recommend this as a team for climbing at all Elo ranges, but for this Elo range, it seems that being double weak to Diggersby in the back is actually a strategy that can be very successful, just due to the fact that Diggersby is seeing a lot less usage overall at higher elos. This may not be a meta trend that persists for all elo brackets, but at the very least on leaderboards, Diggersby usage is way down, as there's a lot of teams that are very, very strong into it, and as a result, teams like Wildcat Dads can have some pretty nice success. I think the pairing of Toedscruel and Magcargo is a very clever one and also a very creative one. Magcargo, it has so many double weaknesses, double weak to ground, double weak to water, so pairing it with a Pokemon like Toedscruel that is the ultimate destroyer of all things Mud Slap, and on top of that, has Seed Bomb to hit the water types for super effective, and you end up finding a pretty interesting anti-meta core. As I mentioned, I don't know if I'd personally recommend this team for climbing in all elo brackets, but it worked very well for Wildcat Dad, and I really like seeing innovative strategies like this one succeed. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is so tremendously appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.